On today's episode of The Franchise, this is episode number 14. And in today's episode, we're going to be going over Michigan beating Ohio State in rivalry weekend of college football, the last weekend of the regular season, and what that means for the college football playoff, as well as USC winning against Notre Dame. Will that put them in the top 4 of the college football playoff rankings? Going to go over NFL Week 12 that included Thanksgiving, Sunday slate, and Monday Night Football, as well as top 10 power rankings for the NFL, and then another Contenders and Pretenders list. So let's get things started here for today's episode. Once again, before we get into the episode, the franchise is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to go give it a follow, go subscribe, and share the podcast. Share it around. But beginning in college football, Michigan and Ohio State was the game of the weekend. This is the game that has been, marked on calendars. Basically, it gets marked every single year. This rivalry is played every single year. Last regular season game for these two teams, and this was one of the bigger games between these two schools in recent years. And that's because both of these teams were undefeated, and both of these teams were ranked in the top 4. Michigan being number 3 and Ohio State being number 2 coming into this weekend. And this was a very, very big game, right? The winner of this game is going to basically cement themselves as a playoff team, going to lock themselves into the college football playoff. And the loser was going to fall out of the top 4 and have going to have to really hope for some magic to happen to sneak back into the playoff. So, how this game end up? Well, Michigan ended up beating Ohio State 45-23 on the road. Ohio State lost by 20 plus points at home. It's one of the worst losses by a top 2 school I've ever seen, that's been around in college football. Just looking at some numbers from this game, C.J. Stroud, potential number 1 overall pick from Ohio State, 31-48. 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. His 2 interceptions came in really, I think they were both in the fourth quarter. I remember seeing one of them. And that one was just really dumb. He's scrambling around. The defenders are coming on him, and he just throws it carelessly away, and it results in an interception. And Ohio State played very bad in this game. You look at the first quarter, Ohio State was in control. They had the time of possession. They had the rushing yards. They were just in control offensively, and Michigan really had a tough time in that first quarter matching what Ohio State was doing. But the rest of the game was not a similar story at all, especially in that second half, third quarter, fourth quarter. Michigan took over, and they really easily walked away with the W in this one. J.J. McCarthy had 3 touchdowns passing, had a touchdown rushing as well. Cornelius Johnson, 4 receptions, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him. One of his touchdowns with a 60-plus yarder. I think one of the big stories from this game is going to be their third down play. Michigan was 7 for 16 on third down. Ohio State went 5 for 16. So only, not a big difference when it comes to the third downs. But Michigan was really able to run the ball, and that was without their best running back and the guy who's a Heisman candidate in Blake Corum. He only played a few snaps in this game, but when it comes to Michigan, Donovan Edwards, 22 carries, 216 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground for Michigan. And they have put themselves into the playoff. They're going to most likely, I will give out my top 10 predictions in a few minutes. But on Tuesday, when the College Football Playoff Committee announces who they think what these next rankings are going to be, the final rankings before we actually get who's going to be in the playoff, Michigan's going to jump up. It's only going to be 1 spot, right? Because they're going to go up from 3 to 2. But they've locked themselves into the playoff spot. If they lose this Big Ten championship game against Purdue, they're going to be in the playoff. Michigan just beat the number 2 team in the country by 20-plus points at home. So big win for Michigan. Ohio State, if they want to make the playoff, they're going to have to hope that a team like USC or a team like TCU loses their conference championship game this weekend. Otherwise, Ohio State's going to be looking at playing in the Rose Bowl, which, isn't that bad. Pretty nice place to play, but that's definitely no college football playoff. Looking at some other games from college football. Georgia, number 1 Georgia, took care of business against Georgia Tech. They won 37-14. South Carolina upset number 10 Clemson. They upset them 31-30 at on the road. Alabama beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl 49-27. Oregon loses to Oregon State. Oregon had a massive lead heading into the fourth quarter. Oregon State pulls a win 38-34. TCU demolishes Iowa State 62-14. Utah 63-21 over Colorado. This one is really funny to look at because LSU has been ranked above schools like USC, Bama, and Tennessee for the past few weeks. And they were ranked number 5 in the country, and they really realistically had no shot to make the playoffs. So to me, it didn't ever make sense why they were ranked number 5. They had no shot to make the college football playoff, but they lose their last game of the regular season, 38-23 against Texas A&M. Texas A&M has had a horrible season, and somehow they come up with a but they come out with a victory in the last game of the season. LSU is still going to be in that SEC championship game against Georgia, where they will lose. And then finally, Notre Dame and USC, one of the bigger games of the weekend. USC wins this game 38-27, and Caleb Williams is going to be the Heisman. I remember a few pods ago, it might have been I think it was about a month ago now, when I went to see USC versus Arizona State, and I said Caleb Williams is the best quarterback. I think I said he's the best quarterback in the nation in college, and he's the best quarterback I've ever seen with my own eyes in person, and that list is very limited. All right, it's only seen the likes of Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, so it shouldn't be hard to beat those guys, but Caleb Williams will win the Heisman Trophy award. In this game, he put up 232 yards passing and a touchdown, and rushing, he rushed for 3 touchdowns on the day against Notre Dame. And this win against Notre Dame, who is ranked number 15 in the country, this is going to put USC into the top 4 of the college football playoff, or so you hope. When we look at what I think the rankings are going to be, which we'll just dive into those right now, my top 4 predictions for what tomorrow's rankings are going to look like, or how I would rank how I would rank the top 10 of college football. I would put Georgia number 1. They're the best team in the country. They have the best defense and one of the best offenses. Number 2 is Michigan, 12-0, just beat Ohio State on the road. TCU, they're 12-0, going to win the Big 12. Put them in number 3. Number 4, I have USC. All right, Caleb Williams is going to win the Heisman Trophy. It's really not even close. His numbers are incredible. He has only 2 interceptions on the season, 40-plus touchdowns, rushing like crazy. The way he's able to extend plays, he looks like Patrick Mahomes on the field, which is a big thing to say, crazy thing to say. A lot of shoes to fill right there, right? But he looks like Patrick Mahomes when he's running around on the field, making plays at quarterback for USC. 5, I'd have Ohio State. 6, Alabama. 7, Penn State. 8, Tennessee. 9, Washington. And 10, Clemson. There's only really 3 teams, I guess, left that can make a playoff spot. Or 4 teams left. All right, Georgia, Michigan, locks. They're making the playoff. But the 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all up for grabs, right? If TCU manages to lose the Big 12 championship game, they will not make the playoff. And if USC manages to lose against Utah in the Pac-12 championship, they will not make the playoff. They'll be a 2-loss team. They can't make the playoff like that, especially if they lose to Utah twice in the same season. So if TCU and USC lose, Ohio State and Alabama are getting into the playoff. It's simple, just like that. If one of these schools loses, if it's TCU, if they lose, the committee's going to have to choose between Ohio State, a one-loss school, and Alabama, a two-loss school. It's going to be very, very interesting to see which way they go, and the rankings that come out on Tuesday we're gonna see who the committee favors. Are they going to favor a one-loss Ohio State who got blown out by Michigan at home? Or are they going to favor an Alabama team who, has 2 losses, but both of their losses have came in the final few minutes of these games in some of the toughest environments on the road in college football? It's going to be very, very interesting to see these rankings. I'm very excited. As a USC fan, I want USC to make the playoff. It's really my only sports team that I'm a fan of that has a chance to compete for a national title. But moving on to the big leagues, the NFL. We had 3 games on Thanksgiving, and then we had all 32 teams played in Week 12. So there's a lot of football to go over. Beginning things on Thanksgiving with the first game of the day, the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions. Bills win this game 28-25. Bills improved to 8-3 on the season. Josh Allen, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also rushed for a touchdown, had 78 yards rushing. He is the Bills' rushing offense. Outside of him, they have no running game. Stephon Diggs, 77 yards and a touchdown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had 122 yards and a touchdown for the Lions. When the Bills lost against the Vikings, and they also lost to the Jets, there was some conversation that the Bills might not be that team. But the Bills are them, when I read out some of this stuff later, the Bills are legit, right? They're 5th in points per game allowed. They're the 5th best, one of the top defenses in the league, and they're 2nd in yards per game and points per game on the offensive side of the ball. So they score, and they don't let teams score. Buffalo picking up another win against the Lions. The Cowboys and the Giants. This is a game that you could say, going into the weekend, was the game for Odell Beckham Jr. Apparently, rumors are he's down to these 2 teams, the Cowboys and the Giants, and he was going to, rumors where he's going to pick whoever wins this game. Well, the Cowboys come out on top. They improve to 8-3, and the Giants fall to 7-4. And like I've been saying all season long, the Giants are frauds. If the Giants make the playoffs, they won't win a playoff game. But they've had the past 2 weeks have been rough for the Giants. 2 losses in these back-to-back weeks. They started off really hot. But you look at this team, they're a one-dimensional football team, and that is the running game of Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones is not a quarterback that you can count on to sling the ball in these big-time moments and win you a football game. And that defense is solid, right? But it's not one of the premier teams in the NFL. They just don't have the talent outside of Saquon Barkley to be a legit team this season. But the Cowboys, on the other hand, and as you'll find out in a little bit when I go over my contenders and pretenders and where I have the Dallas Cowboys, they're one of the few teams in the NFL that I think can win a Super Bowl right now. I think they're one of 8 teams that can win a Super Bowl. They are very, very good. That defense is incredible, and they have a nice running game with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And if they add Odell Beckham Jr. to CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, Dallas Cowboys are going to be one of the premier teams to beat in the NFC and in the entire NFL as a whole. And then the final game from Thanksgiving, we had the Patriots take on the Vikings, where they fall 26-33. Minnesota improves to 9-2 on the season. Minnesota is very good. The only problem with them is they have the worst ranked pass defense in the NFL. It's dead last in the NFL. They allow the most yards per game passing. Mac Jones had himself a game against the Vikings, 382 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wasn't enough, though. Minnesota pulls out with a W. Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I need to do a wide receiver rankings section or video or something. Top 10, top 15. But Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not going to say it's not even close. I think, it's close among some of these receivers. But Justin Jefferson's like by far the best receiver in the league. It's incredible what he's able to do and what he's done these past 3-4 weeks for the Vikings. The Buccaneers fall to the Browns 23-17. The Buccaneers fall to 5-6, but they're still first place in the division, and they'll have a home playoff game. That the entire NFC South is horrible. And the Browns in the last game with Jacoby Brissett before Deshaun Watson comes back get a W. Bengals pick up a win on the road against the Titans 20-16. Both these teams are 7-4. Joe Burrow only got sacked one time this game, which is very good to see. The Bengals are a very good team, and they didn't even have Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon in this game. When it comes to the Titans, they have the 29th ranked. They're ranked 29th in the NFL in receiving yards per game. So outside of Derrick Henry, they have no offense, and especially out of the wide receiver position. The Dolphins below. They win by 15 at home against the Texans. They win 30-15. Dolphins improved to 8-3. They haven't lost a game when Tua has started and played the entire game at quarterback. They're 8-0 this season. Like I've said in the past, they have the best wide receiver duo in the NFL with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And in this game, they both had 85 yards on the day. Jeff Wilson had 39 yards and a touchdown, and Tua had 299 yards and a touchdown on the day. That offense for Miami is Super Bowl caliber, championship caliber offense in Miami. And the Texans are the worst team in the league. The Jets pull out a win, 31-10 against the Bears. They improved to 7-4. Bears fall to 3-9 in a game without Justin Fields at quarterback. This is an interesting game, and this game's going to have a lot of implications and a lot of questions around it going forward. Zach Wilson didn't play in this game. He got benched earlier in the week after a tough loss last week where they didn't score a single point of offense. I mean, they scored 3 points, but like offensively, Zach Wilson did not help out the Jets at all. So they bench him this week, put in Mike White, and he balls out for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Garrett Wilson, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Elijah Moore with 64 yards and a touchdown for the Jets. The Jets' defense is 5th in yards allowed per game, and 4th in points allowed per game. The Jets have one of the best defenses in the NFL, so all they need to figure out is how they're going to score points, because that defense is shutting teams down. And if they can just get some like average quarterback play and some average offense, they're going to be able to win games, and possibly, when it comes down to the postseason, if they make it there, they could possibly win a playoff game, with that defense and some solid quarterback play. But the question is, does Zach Wilson get his starting job back? I don't think he's going to get it back next week, in this next game, upcoming week 13, because Mike White just won you a game, and he had a great day, 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. Zach Wilson has not been playing good at all. So I think you got to keep Mike White in at quarterback for these, for this next game. You got to just take it week to week. Whoever gives you the best opportunity to win is the guy that you got to play. And regardless of Zach Wilson being the number 2 overall pick in the 2021 draft, if he doesn't give you the best opportunity to win, he should not be playing for you. So we'll see how this situation progresses, because Zach Wilson's only in his second year in the NFL, and he's already been benched for a guy who is a backup, but is playing way better than him. The Commanders beat the Falcons 19-13. The Commanders are in the playoffs right now, which is crazy because a few weeks ago, they were one of the worst teams in the league with Carson Wentz. Take him out, put in Taylor Heineke, Commanders are a playoff team. The Panthers beat the Broncos 23-10. The Broncos are horrible. Russell Wilson sucks. I'm going to do a quarterback rankings at the end of the season. I don't know where I'm going to put Russell Wilson. Because I guess before the season, I think I had him as a top 10 quarterback, and I don't even think he's top 20 after this season. Jaguars beat the Ravens 28-27. The Cardinals lose to the Chargers 25-24. Raiders win in overtime 40-34 against the Seahawks. Josh Jacobs has himself a game. 33 carries, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 6 receptions, and 74 yards receiving for Josh Jacobs. The Chiefs beat the Rams 26-10. Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. And the Niners beat the Saints, shut them out, 13-0 at home. And then Sunday Night Football, we had the Eagles and the Packers. Eagles won this game 40-33. And Aaron Rodgers, is he going to be out for the season? From what it looks like, he hurt his ribs. And there's really been no confirmation, no news on this injury at all. I guess we'll find out on Tuesday. But Aaron Rodgers left the game. Jordan Love came in, and Jordan Love looked pretty solid in his fourth quarter reps that he got against the Eagles. His ball had a lot of zip on it. He threw a touchdown pass to Christian Watson, who's been an amazing receiver these past 4 weeks. He's been incredible. But Jordan Love, the expectation will probably be that he's going to get a start next week. And there's a chance that we won't see Aaron Rodgers for the rest of the season. And some people are even starting the rumor that he won't even play ever again. We might have just seen the last of Aaron Rodgers in his career. And then finally, on Monday Night Football, we had Steelers. Colts. Steelers won this game 24-17. All right. Let's get on here to the teams I consider contenders in the NFL. I have 8 teams, and there's 4 in each league. I didn't plan that out. I didn't limit myself to that. But when I was going through, I found that these 8 teams are the teams that I think can legitimately win a Super Bowl this season. Beginning with the Miami Dolphins, like I said earlier, they're 3rd in yards per game, 6th in points per game. They have a middle-of-the-pack defense, but their offense with Hill, Waddle, Wilson Jr., and Tua is incredible. They are able to throw the ball around the field, score points, and just constantly have so much variety in that offense. The Dolphins, I think they can win a Super Bowl this year. I don't think it's crazy to say. Tua has proven himself this season to be a quarterback that can stay in the NFL and be a legit guy. Next up, I have the Bills. They're 5th in points allowed per game. They have one of the best defenses and a top 2 offense in the league. Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL. Diggs, Davis, and McKenzie as that wide receiver group. And then that defense with Von Miller in it is... The Bills are very, very, very good, regardless of how they played a few weeks ago against the Jets and against the Vikings. The Bills are still a team that can win a Super Bowl. I have the Cincinnati Bengals as one of these teams that can win. They're 5th in points per game and 6th in yards per game. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst, Smosh Pirine. That offense for the Bengals is legit. And their defense is not too bad either. It's not one of the best in the league. It's not one of the worst. It's middle of the pack, right? But Joe Burrow has taken the Bengals to a Super Bowl before. So why would I think he can't do it this year? And then finally in the AFC, I have the Chiefs. They're the best team in the league. Right, they're 1st in yards and points per game on the offensive side of the ball. Regardless of their defensive status, it's not one of the best in the league. But Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the game. They got Travis Kelce, the greatest tight end of all time. I said it. He is. And they're doing this without Tyreek Hill, who's a top 3 wide receiver. Juju, McCole Hardman, Valdez-Scantling. They bring in Kadarius Toney. So the Chiefs are the best team in the league. It wouldn't surprise me if they make a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl because they are the best team, and it's not even close. And then the other 4 teams I have are the Eagles. They're 10-1. They're 4th in yards, 3rd in points per game. And then defensively, they're second in yards allowed, and they have 23 takeaways on the season, which leads the NFL. So they're doing it on both sides of the ball. They have a great running game, a nice wide receiver duo of Brown and Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts, protected by the best offensive line in the league, is enough offensively. And that defense with Darius Slay and Bradbury is very, very, very good. So the Eagles, they are 10-1. They're legit, regardless of what people say about them having a weak schedule and they don't play good teams and their competition's not good. They are balling out. So there's no reason to think that they are not a team that can win a Super Bowl this season. Next, I have the Cowboys. Offensively, 13th in yards per game, 7th in points per game. But that defense is 7th in yards allowed and 2nd in points allowed. With Micah Parsons, the best defensive player in the NFL, and Trayvon Diggs, who's a top 10 cornerback in the NFL, they are very, very, very good on that defense. That defense is one of the best defenses in the league. Definitely top 5, argument for top 3. And then Dak with CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, and Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm just going to go and say it, with Odell Beckham Jr., when it comes to the playoff time, the Cowboys, I think, can win a Super Bowl this season. But, we've said that in years past, and they can't even win a playoff game. But I don't know. Something seems different about this Cowboys team. I guess time will tell. Next, I have the Vikings. Offensively, they're 17th in yards, 12th in points per game. Their defense, their passing defense is horrible. Like I said earlier, they're dead last, allowing the most passing yards per game in the league. But when you have the best receiver in Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs, and Kirk Cousins has been playing very good football this season, they're not 9-2 for nothing. All right, they're 9-2 for a reason. I think the Vikings can win a ring this season. And then finally, I have the San Francisco 49ers. 10th in yards per game, 15th in points per game, and their defense is the best defense in the league. First in yards, first in points allowed. They're shutting teams down, shutting teams out. And with Debo, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey, I think that offense is, pretty good enough. It's pretty solid. So the Niners are my 8th and final team that I can see right now competing and winning a Super Bowl this season. And then the other teams that are in the playoff picture, Ravens, Titans, Jets, Patriots, Chargers, I don't think those teams can win it. There's too many flaws. When it comes to the Ravens, they are blowing games in the fourth quarter that they are walking into with the lead. The Titans have no receiving offense, passing offense at all. The Jets, they do have a top 5 defense, but when it comes to their offense, and especially at quarterback, I think there's too many questions there. The Patriots, that defense is good, but I don't trust Mac Jones to win you a playoff game or a Super Bowl. And then when it comes to the Chargers, their wins are against some of the worst teams in the league. Arizona, Cleveland. They lost to Jacksonville. That's a bad loss. They beat the Raiders. They beat the Broncos. So the Chargers are not as good as people would have thought they were going to be earlier in the season, especially before the season started. And then I also have the Buccaneers, Giants, Commanders, and Seahawks as teams that I don't see winning it this year. Tampa, they just have not been themselves all year. Maybe Tom Brady can flip a switch when he gets a home playoff game. But I don't know. This Buccaneers team, they can't run the football. Their offensive line's in shambles. And their receivers drop a lot of footballs. The Giants, I've been saying it all year. I don't think the Giants can win a playoff game. I feel like I said every single episode of the podcast. Commanders, Taylor Heineke, better than Carson Wentz. But this team just doesn't seem like a team that can win a game, like a game in the postseason. And then the Seahawks, I don't think they'll end up in the playoff race when it's all said and done, but right now they're in it. Geno Smith's been amazing, but their defense outside of their rookie corner, they have no defense. Kenneth Walker's amazing, but they're not one of the teams that I can see winning a playoff game or a Super Bowl this season. All right, finally, we're going to do my top 10 power rankings. heading into week 13. So taking a look at last week's, there was no podcast last week, but I did release my top 10 on the Instagram. I think it's at the franchise I don't remember the Instagram handle. I'm not even going to lie. But the Instagram's linked in the YouTube description. But last week, my top 10 went as follows. Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, top 3, followed by Cowboys, Vikings, Dolphins, Titans, 49ers, Ravens, and Bengals. So how do things shake up this week? Well, the top 3 remains the same. Chiefs, Eagles, and Bills remain there in the top 3. Then I have the Cowboys staying at number 4, the Vikings and Dolphins staying at 5 and 6. So the top 6 stays exactly the same. I was thinking about moving the Dolphins up. I really liked what they did, but then I realized they played the Houston Texans, the worst team in the league. Can I move them up when a team like the Vikings beat a team in the playoffs like the Patriots or the Cowboys who just beat the Giants? I couldn't do that. So the Dolphins stay. The top 6 stays the same. I had the Bengals. I have them at 7. They jump up 3 spots from 10 to 7. A nice win against a team like the Tennessee Titans, who I had at 7 last week. So big win for the Bengals. I think they're one of these teams, that can win when it's going to matter. 8, I have the Niners. They move up. I think I have them saying, they stayed exactly the same at number 8. 9, I have the Titans. They dropped down 2 spots from 7 after that loss to Cincinnati. And then number 10 last week was the Ravens. This week I have the Jets. Mike White, he did his thing. That Jets offense looked good. And their defense is one of the best in the league. The 10th spot was hard to choose from. Teams. There's a lot of teams I could have put in there. Patriots, Ravens, Jets, Giants. A lot of options for that 10th spot, but I went with the New York Jets. Real quick, Jose Abreu signs a 3-year deal with the Astros, 3 years, $20 million. Former AL MVP in the 2020 shortened COVID season. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the franchise. Short, little, quick episode here. Just recapping college football and the NFL Week 12. Once again, this podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So make sure to subscribe, follow, share the podcast, and I'll see you guys next time.